When you're over 50, you obviously you have less time and you want to make the most of the time. You don't want to get to the point where you have the date in person and it's like, no, this isn't working. You want to hopefully have a lot of those boxes checked.
Did you push record?
And thanks for tuning back into Second Act TV. Robert Manni is back for another segment talking love relationships, dating after 50, and how to turn that first date into a second date. Robert, thanks so much for joining us again.
My pleasure, Silka. Always great to be with you. Thanks.
Yes, always great to have you. And we just finished a segment where we sit today, in the middle of this pandemic. And I know these videos will run forever, but it's kind of weird talking about dating when we're in this state of mind right now. At least it is for me. So we will, we'll link to the other segment, just kind of give that some context as to how our dating world might have changed. But what hasn't changed when you do start to interact with people, be it on FaceTime or you do get out there again, let's talk about some first date tips to make sure that you have the best possible opportunity to get to a second date.
All right. Well, let's assume that where the virus thing has peaked and ebbed and we're back getting closer to normal. You're allowed to go out of the house and meet and talk to people again. So, and I don't mean to make light of it by any means, but so let's assume though that things will get back to normal at some point. And for dating, and particularly when you're over 50, you obviously you have less time and you want to make the most of the time. So I say, for whether you're under 50 or over 50, but particularly if you're over 50, the first date, I think the most important aspect is qualification before you make that date. And I think you want to find out about the other person's values, what's their past without going down the rabbit hole. Have they ever been married? How many times? Do they have kids? How old are the kids? Is that going to be a factor? Where are they in terms of geography? Are they close enough by? A lot of people have these rules. Like I knew somebody in New York was like 2 subway stops. That's it. And I'm sure when you live around, Santa Monica or something, it's like you got to be within a mile, or you're not going to drive up to Burbank or something to date because it's just too far. So I think you have to do a lot. You have to be smarter before you have a date when you're over 50, because you don't want to get to the point where you have the date in person and it's like, no, this isn't working. You want to hopefully have a lot of those boxes checked. And so you have to be a better qualifier, I think. So that's dating tip number one. I think number two is you still want to keep it short. The first time you meet somebody, the energy is going to change, because when you meet somebody, there's 3 ways to, where the energy is going to shift. One is you have your first communication, whether it's a text or you're responding to an app or whatever. And then the next time is maybe you speak on the phone. And you hear somebody's voice and there's an energy exchange with the voice. And then when you meet somebody in person, obviously, even if you've seen pictures of them, you're going to see what they really look like. And there's going to be an energetic aspect to that. And it's important. So you have to be prepared for that. So you want to, I think, first make sure you have the right energy when you're corresponding. Maybe have that phone call. I think it's a good idea, even if it's a quick one. And then when you meet in person, keep it short. Do it something casual. And a lot of people who haven't dated online, they meet somebody or they think they're going to meet somebody, and the guys are sometimes they like, this is the one, I want to get married, she's the one, and they want to go out to dinner right away. And then halfway through the dinner, the woman's like, my friend's calling me, and they can't wait to leave. And you don't want to set yourself up where both people, one is disappointed and the other one's hurt. So keep it short, just like you would if you were under 50. And that means you meet for coffee, you meet in a casual place with a lot of other people around, you meet for a glass of wine, or whatever. And then if things work out, well, maybe you have an appetizer, and then that's it. You kind of cut it off. I would say keep it casual, keep it short, and then know how to end the date so you set the person up and to manage their expectations, whether that was it or maybe you want to see them again. And how do you do the handoff after the date?
For somebody, especially if they haven't been out for a while or they're rusty, I think that there are some ways of or if you're nervous on going on that first date. I think that there were some tips too that I think we had discussed that if you think about it, that could help you. Like when as you're talking, respond proportionately.
Hmm.
I think that was a really good piece of advice that I actually received a long time ago, just about interacting with people, period, whether it's business or what. But you almost mimic their conversation style.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that?
I think it's a good idea. I personally, I do that if I'm in an interview or a sales situation, yeah, because you want to get simpatico, you want to get on the same wavelength. But personally, I don't do that enough. I for me at least, I try not to put this unless it comes naturally, I don't do it. I want to be the real me,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to make that a good thing. You don't want to be I'm so direct that I'm real, and then you hurt people's feelings or something. But you also don't want to think everything through to the point where you're putting on airs. So
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line with that.
Yeah.
But I think getting together energetically is a good thing.
Yeah. It is. But I think it just kind of keeps you from realizing whether or not maybe you're talking too much about yourself or not
Mm.
enough.
Yeah, yeah, and that happens, and particularly in first dates, where sometimes it turns into one person's asking all the questions and the other person's doing all the answering, and then at the end they're like looking at each other like, is that how it's supposed to work? Instead of a conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
That's organic.
Yeah. The other thing is, and I hear you what you're saying. Don't over, you don't want to be over prepared, overly prepared, because you don't want to be yourself. But there are people. I mean, let's face it, you're a very confident guy. You know how to talk with people. You've been worked in environments where that's required. You're a radio host. You're the host of KCAA Radio, Guys Guy Radio. For you,
This is
that's
true.
easy. I think relative or much easier, I should say, than maybe the average Joe. So I think one thing that and I was going to ask you about this, is it advisable to come prepared with some stories about yourself, that something that you would tell naturally that
Yeah,
others.
I think, yeah. Well, I listen, if I'm with a woman that I'm really attracted to, like any other guy, I'll get a little nervous and sometimes maybe not be as smooth as I'd want to be. And that's fun. And a woman will usually pick up on that. And you don't want it to be the point where you're desperate because they really can smell that. And that really works against you. But I think if it's not a bad idea to determine beforehand, okay, how do I want to approach this date? And what are a couple of things I can talk about, and how do I not want to turn it into an interview of me or of her, and how can we create some sparkles? And yeah, I think having a little bit of preparation is not a bad thing whatsoever for anybody.
Mhm.
Particularly, I think in one area, and that is if you take the time, even when you're responding to somebody on a dating site or an app, read what they have to say and maybe start with a question in your first interaction with them, like, "Hey, I see you like to go skiing. Have you ever gone to Telluride or whatever?" Something where it's not an open end, that's open ended, that it's not yes, no. And you can get them talking. And then it also shows the person that, hey, this guy took the time to read and didn't just look at my pictures. So I think that's an important thing
No,
for
I
men.
agree. No, that's one thing I noticed. When I was online, you could tell right away who's been online dating a lot and who hasn't by the type of questions they asked, or whether they paid attention to your profile. And this, of course, goes both ways. This isn't what men should do or women should do. It's just what people should do. Uh, yeah, if somebody wrote a profile, read it and then show interest in that. If you've gotten to the point of being actually with them,
If you're interested, I
if
think,
you're
first of
interested,
all, be interested. Don't be
right?
interested just because, some guy has like, he just wants to date Asian women. So, okay, whatever. Now, you read what she has to say because it might not be a good fit, regardless of like, that's your type. Like, just take a step, like, get a grip and see what she has to say because it might be all wrong. And you just have to look, you have to look past the cover to get into the book.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, we're coming to the end of the segment, Robert. Is there any sort of prevailing tip or tips that you want to leave us with?
I think people should always be themselves. They should, when approaching the first date, have a plan. If you're a male, you should have a plan, and you should base the plan based on what you found out that your woman partner, a prospective partner, likes to do. So don't just thrust something at her. Come up with something that that is convenient for her, something that she's not going to have a problem with, and something that's easy for her to get out of if things aren't working out. Show some respect that way.
Yeah, no, good advice. Well, Robert, thanks. We'll, of course, link to all of your information, to your book.
Great.
I'll bring up the graphic for that as well as your radio show, and we'll see you.
Thank
I want
you.
to hold you for another segment of
Great.
Second Act TV. See you soon. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube. When you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we start a new video. See you next time.